Spring 2025 in Europe is shaping up to be quite intriguing thanks to the unexpected influence of La Nina. Long range forecasts indicate a dominant high pressure system over the continent, coupled with a low pressure area in the west and northwest. This pattern is a classic La Nina signature, which we've seen in past seasons. As we transition from winter to summer during the meteorological spring, March, April, and May, we can expect a roller coaster of weather dynamics. Typically, La Nina's effects are subtle in Europe, but this year, the forecasts suggest a more pronounced impact. So, get ready for a spring that could surprise us all, with weather patterns that challenge our expectations and keep us on our toes. The temperature forecast indicates a trend towards warmer than normal conditions across much of the continent, particularly in the northern and northeastern regions. This aligns closely with the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecast predictions. Interestingly, we're seeing a shift towards a more westerly flow in Western and Northwestern Europe, although the anomaly there is noticeably weaker. When we turn to precipitation, Central and Western Europe are expected to remain mostly dry, thanks to a dominant high-pressure system. In contrast, Northern and Southern Europe will experience increased precipitation this spring, driven by low-pressure systems in both the north and over the Mediterranean. Looking at snowfall, the United Kingdom Meteorological Organization forecast suggests lower than normal snowfall this season, which is consistent with the above-average temperatures and high-pressure dominance. However, northwestern Scandinavia is set to receive more spring snowfall, where cooler temperatures and a low-pressure zone will bring ample precipitation. It's a fascinating weather pattern shaping up across the continent. The United Kingdom Meteorological Organization model presents an intriguing spring season forecast, showing a high-pressure zone firmly positioned over Western Europe. This setup creates a stark contrast with a low-pressure area lurking over the far North Atlantic. As we look at the temperature predictions, we see a trend toward warmer than normal conditions, particularly in the northern and northeastern parts of the continent. This aligns closely with the ECMWF forecast, suggesting a consistent pattern across models. Interestingly, there's also a hint of a more westerly flow impacting the western and northwestern regions, though the anomaly appears weaker. Overall, it seems like spring is gearing up to be pleasantly warm for much of Europe, setting the stage for a vibrant season ahead. Europe is gearing up for an interesting spring, with forecasts indicating more precipitation across the southwestern, central, and northern regions. This is largely due to a lower surface pressure area settling over southwestern Europe and a broader low-pressure zone hovering over the North Atlantic. Colder temperatures are also in the mix, which could impact snowfall potential as we transition into spring. While we typically associate spring with warmer weather, March can still surprise us with snowfall. However, the latest forecast for March to May 2025 suggests that most of Europe will experience below normal snowfall. This doesn't mean we'll see no snow at all. It just indicates that significant snowfall events will be less frequent than what we've seen over the past 3 decades. Yet, don't underestimate the power of a single cold front. With the right conditions, it can unleash a substantial amount of snow across Central Europe, even if it doesn't reflect in the monthly averages. So keep an eye on the skies. Spring might just have a few surprises in store. As we look ahead to spring 2025 in Europe, the forecasts from the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts and United Kingdom Meteorological Organization models reveal some intriguing patterns. Over the 3 months of March, April, and May, we can expect a notable high-pressure anomaly dominating the region. This is particularly characteristic of a La Nina spring, suggesting that global weather influences are at play. The surface pressure anomaly indicates that while Central Europe will bask in milder conditions, low-pressure systems will linger to the southwest, southeast, and in the north. This setup could lead to warmer temperature anomalies across the west, central, and eastern parts of Europe. However, don't be surprised if occasional Atlantic fronts sweep in from the northwest, bringing some variability to the otherwise stable weather. Overall, it looks like a season of contrasts, with a blend of warmth and the potential for some dynamic weather patterns. Looking at the surface temperature forecast, it's clear we're in for a warmer pattern across much of Central and Northern Europe. This warmth is largely due to a high-pressure zone, combined with a southwestern flow from a low-pressure area in the Atlantic. However, if you're in the southwestern or parts of Central Europe, brace yourself for normal to below normal temperatures. Now let's talk precipitation. March is shaping up to be drier for much of Central Europe and the East, thanks to that same high-pressure influence. But don't put away your umbrellas just yet. The southern, western, and northern regions can expect more rainfall, driven by the low-pressure systems from the North Atlantic and the western Mediterranean. It's a classic case of weather systems at play, creating a diverse climate tapestry across the continent. La Niña is shaping the weather patterns across Europe this spring. We're seeing warmer and drier conditions in central and western regions, while the southwest, northwest, and northern areas, along with the Mediterranean, are bracing for increased precipitation. As we step into March, the first month of meteorological spring, the European Center for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts Extended Forecast reveals a fascinating picture. High pressure is dominating Central and Eastern Europe, while a low-pressure zone looms over the North Atlantic and Northwestern Europe. This pattern mirrors the typical La Niña influence we've discussed. The surface pressure forecast highlights a significant low-pressure area in the North Atlantic, reinforcing the idea that La Niña is indeed making its presence felt this spring. It's a compelling reminder of how interconnected our weather systems are. La Niña is set to influence our weather patterns this winter and spring of 2025. As we dive into the data, we can observe some intriguing pressure anomalies. A high-pressure zone is building over Central Europe, pushing eastward, while a low-pressure area lingers in the North Atlantic and the western parts of Europe. This setup typically leads to above-normal temperatures across much of Central, Western, and Southern Europe. However, if you look further north, you'll find cooler temperatures, a direct result of the jet stream shifting northward. This La Niña pattern could mean a spring that feels quite different from what we're used to, with warmer conditions dominating the south and a chillier vibe up north. It's fascinating how these atmospheric changes can shape our seasons. Spring 2025 in Europe is shaping up to be quite intriguing, thanks to the unexpected influence of La Niña. Long-range forecasts indicate a dominant high-pressure system over much of the continent, while a low-pressure system lingers in the west and northwest. This pattern is reminiscent of past La Niña springs, which typically bring a mix of weather dynamics during this transitional period from winter to summer. As we move through March, April, and May, we can expect a roller coaster of weather, from sunny days to sudden showers. What's fascinating is that La Niña usually has a subtle impact on European weather, but this year, the forecasts suggest a more pronounced signature. It's a reminder of how interconnected our climate systems are, and how even distant oceanic events can ripple through our seasons. So, keep an eye on the skies. Spring 2025 might just surprise us all. Spring 2025 in Europe is shaping up to be quite intriguing, thanks to the unexpected influence of La Niña. Long-range forecasts indicate a dominant high-pressure system over the continent, coupled with a low-pressure area in the west and northwest. This pattern is a classic La Niña signature, which we've seen in past seasons. As we transition from winter to summer during the meteorological spring, March, April, and May, we can expect a roller coaster of weather dynamics. Typically, La Niña's effects are subtle in Europe, but this year, the forecasts suggest a more pronounced impact. So, get ready for a spring that could surprise us all, with weather patterns that challenge our expectations and keep us on our toes.